Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to discuss a recent report on how Brexit, specifically leaving the single market mostly, but also the customs union, has sounded the death knell for craft beer production in the UK. Rishi Sunak was recently pretending to promote British beer, yet, despite being supposedly the leader of the party of small business, he was one of the ones who made it impossible for many of these small breweries to even survive, from growing businesses to being out of business. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, a recent article in The Guardian noted that 100 small brewers in Britain have had to close down the past 18 months. In actual fact, it's more than 100, significantly more, really. Now, brewers were one of those industries hit by COVID, of course. But if COVID were the reason for failure alone, we would see similar patterns of decline in other European countries, wouldn't we? In fact, craft beer production in the UK hit its peak in 2020, the year of the most intense COVID disruption to business. The drop occurred in 2021, the year we left the single market and before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Whereas in Germany, for example, they were hit. Everyone was hit, all brewers were hit by COVID. But their craft beer production has gone up and up. There's more producers than there were in 2019. There are articles about how small brewing companies in Germany are actually threatening their more illustrious rivals, the big boys. So why are craft brewing businesses closing down in Britain, where more are popping up in another very famous beer producing country, which was also hit by COVID and by the war in Ukraine? And the reason's not that hard to explain. We left the single market. Just as with a lot of producers in the food and drink industry, many of these smaller producers were exporting. But after leaving the customs union and especially the single market, the paperwork became too much. And not just the extent of it, but the cost. And of course, something like that hits a small business much more. And this isn't the first time I've talked about Brexit brewing either. Like about a year ago, there was one notable company revealed how its exports had gone from £600,000 a year to 2,000. And what made this company, the Old Dairy Brewery, notable was that they had acted as an international trade champion for the government in promoting ways to cope with Brexit. Now, some people at the time thought it was a bit of poetic justice. This wasn't fair. They weren't supporting Brexit. It's just that they had the expertise to understand the new Brexit trading environment and try to help other businesses understand it. Because there will have been a lot of companies hit by Brexit, not just because of the trade barriers, but their lack of understanding of them. Because if you only exported to other countries in the single market, you didn't need to know the first thing about international export. For example, there's suggestions in the article, and I'm sure it absolutely happened, that at the point at which we were going to go for the hard Brexit in 2019, some of these small brewing companies will have been starting up. If they'd have understood what the hard Brexit was going to do, they wouldn't have done that. You know, you didn't need to know the first thing about international export, which meant you also didn't need to know the first thing about Brexit. The EU made the process not just simpler, but literally as simple as supplying a customer in your own country in the vast majority of cases. The lack of understanding of how to export to a different market made the process much worse. But the Old Dairy Brewery still saw exports fall from £600,000 a year to £2,000. And you can't put that down, oh, they just don't understand the systems. No, it wasn't because they didn't understand. They did. The government marked them out as an international trade expert. They didn't fall foul of their own ignorance. That obliteration of exports was entirely down to the trade barriers. And the same has happened to over 100 others. There were other problems noted in the article as well. The shortage of carbon dioxide, for example. Remember that? I will remind people that it was only Britain that actually suffered the shortage. There was a European shortage, but the only companies that couldn't get the carbon dioxide at all were companies in Britain. Companies in Northern Ireland were fine. They have access to the single market. The single market supplies its own first. Britain is what's known as a customer of last resort. That means we get our orders filled after everyone inside or with access to the single market has been dealt with. And it's not spiteful resentment because we're sat on a big pile of sovereignty. It's just that it's easier to supply everyone else first because there's none of all that paperwork. It's all, that's only for us. So it's like, oh, we can send these things to Belgium and Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland and the Netherlands and so on. Yeah, we'll do that because there's none of the paperwork. We just have to put get it all dispatch notices, receipts, things like that, get it all done off. Britain. Oh, got all this big stack of paperwork. Yeah, we'll leave that till last, shall we? Oh, there's no goods left. Oh dear, we can't send it. The path of least resistance does not travel through Britain anymore. The high cost of electricity was also cited. Now, this has hit a lot of food and drink producers. Not necessarily directly a Brexit impact, although if we'd remained in the single market for energy, those companies would have been better off. But it is still a result of Conservative Party policy. You know, I keep saying we could have applied windfall taxes to gas companies, used the money to compensate energy companies for the increase in the wholesale cost of gas, and energy prices would have hardly gone up at all. The government chose to protect the profits, and not just profits, grow the profits of multinational corporations and sacrifice small British companies. It was a political choice, just like Brexit. None of it was forced on us due to global events. We elected MPs who chose to do it. We had a choice of other MPs who would have chosen not to do that. Oh, and just for fun, when Rishi Sunak was pretending to be promoting the British beer industry recently, he was actually putting up alcohol duty in a way which disproportionately impacts the smaller producers. I said at the time, although he was trying to imply that alcohol duty was going down, it was actually going up. The bottom line is that there are more craft beer producers in Germany now than there were in 2019. In the UK, there are fewer. COVID hit the industry, so did the war in Ukraine. But it's only in Britain where the industry has actually been declining since both of these events took place. And this is a classic example of how a small business gets hit by Brexit more severely than a larger one, even ignoring the fact that it's less cost effective to hire people specifically to deal with Brexit rules. Like if you're a large company, you can hire a few people whose job is just to deal with Brexit. If you're a small company employing 5 people, you're having to increase your workforce by 20% just to get one person to do that. It's not cost effective. But also, beyond that, if a significant chunk of your business is exports, doesn't have to be a majority, just like 30% or something, and those exports disappear overnight, you're not likely to be making such high profits that you can just afford for it to disappear. You don't have a business model. A larger business is more likely to be able to still export, even if some of those exports go down, because the costs of doing so are spread out over a much greater volume of sales. The smaller business just gets priced out of the market. And so even their domestic production then stops, because if they go out of business, even the stuff they were producing for the British market stops until it is picked up by those who can survive. And it also leads to a net reduction in the people employed in the industry. A small business employs, smaller business in general employ more people in the UK than larger businesses collectively. And when a large business increases production to meet the needs left behind when a small business closes, they don't have to employ as many extra staff as were lost when that small business closed. They may not have to employ any extra staff. As for the production which used to go to the EU, that is now being picked up by producers in the single market. Profits made in the EU with taxes paid into EU treasuries, where they used to go to our treasury. I mean, how anyone can still think that the Conservatives are the party of small business or the party of economic competence is beyond me. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.